Uh, Good day. We're filming a kind of, it's not so much a budget overview, just kind of the state of affairs for Windsor and the greater Vermont community, Upper Valley community, as we enter into our budget season. It is December 10th when we're filming this. It's snowing pretty hard outside, so uh, it's looking like wintertime, and it looks like right in the middle of the holidays. Uh, the Select Board and the Budget Committee will begin their discussions on December 17th with a joint meeting to just talk about big picture things. And then, as we've done in the past, in January, we'll have weekly meetings every Wednesday to go through the budget with a budget to present to the public the last week in January for a vote in March at town meeting. So all of that's pretty much on track to be the same way. Things, as I'm sure you know, in life have changed quite a bit since COVID has happened. That really upset the apple cart in a lot of ways, and there are a lot of things from costs of things to availability of things that are just not the same. And certainly our municipal government hasn't been immune to the impacts of some of those changes. And this slideshow is geared kind of be a reference document so that you can kind of see what may be impacting us from the outside as well as from the inside and what's driving the changes in tax bills. This presentation, the PowerPoint will be on the website and be part of our budget documentation, so you'll be able to reference it if you choose to. And I just want to put out here, there's some things here that, make some statements. They're not meant to be opinions or particularly my opinion. It's just the state of affairs. So there are observations of some of the things that have changed in the market that have been reflected in the tax bills that you've been getting. So we're going to go over the budgets and how they've changed over the last, a lot of it's just 15 years. It's the amount of time I've been here. And as I think most people know, this will be the last budget that I build, and somebody else will be there to manage it. I want to make sure that we're passing the baton and giving a very competent document for the new person to manage. So we're going to be going over how internal things have impacted, and then some external things, labor, housing, healthcare, things like that, and how that impacts your budget. And we'll also talk about what's commonly referred to as the homestead program, and to make sure you understand how that works. So with that said, I'll get started. And again, I hate sitting through PowerPoint presentations, so it's up there, but don't think you have to sit here and read it. If you really do want to read it at a time where you're just sitting in a comfy chair. This first graph shows just what property taxes have done between 2012 and 2025. And you see the graph gets significantly steeper over the last few years. And those are also the years where we saw COVID, and then most importantly, we've seen very significant changes in education spending. When you look at the chart, what do the numbers say? Well, you know what they say, liars use statistics and statistics lie. But that doesn't mean they don't give you some sense of a picture. This shows what the tax rate has done since 2011, and you see the average is 3.25%, which I, as the town manager, I stand behind that. If we can keep an annual increase of less than 4%, I think we're doing our job delivering more value to the community. But you can see it's not always linear. We see some years it's 12% or 11%, and some years, early on that they were negative increases. This is an important graph, and it has to do with the budget survey we take every year, and it's currently out there. You can find it in the newsletter, find it on Facebook, and if you're a Windsor property owner or resident, whether you rent or own, it's important that you take the survey. The Budget Committee and the Select Board do pay attention to it. And really what it says, if you look right here, you see this green line, it goes like this. And this So the blue line goes like that. This is the question: are your taxes too high, too low, or I'm more concerned about priorities? And you can see, I kind of used a benchmark. This right here is 50%. If the community, if less than half the community are saying their taxes are too high, I view that to say is, I just want to make sure I'm getting a good value. That changed last year. It had been under 50%, but last year it spiked up to 63%, I think, said that their taxes were too high. And going the other way is it went down where people were saying, I'm just about priorities. And this part here in red, this slide gives an interpretation of what that data did, and it said the too high went from a peak of 50% in 2017 to actually 60, almost 61% last year. And the neither too high or too low, which means I'm more concerned about priorities. You know, that was between 27 and 40%. Last year, it dropped to 26%. So people were much less concerned about priorities and much more concerned about the price of their tax bill. And we've all taken that into consideration. This is another graph that looks like it goes all over the place. But it talks about satisfied or dissatisfied with the value. And the blue line is dissatisfied. And you can see people, there was a trend up, then it comes back down, but then there's been a pretty good trend up that people are satisfied till last year. Boy, that took a nosedive. The dissatisfied is the opposite thing, and you kind of see it moves in the opposite direction. When people are satisfied, that goes up, and people are dissatisfied, that goes down. Last year, once again, people were dissatisfied, and it shot, you know, way up there. And again, you know, we're taking that, you know, certainly under consideration when we're putting together, you know, a structure for the taxes. So that's basically all that says is over time, taxes have only gone up about 3.5%, but lately they've been going up a lot faster. That's been reflected in our annual survey where people are saying my bills are too high and my satisfaction is low. That's what all of that means. So what goes into your tax bill? We are about 53% of municipal services and 47% education. Most towns are municipal is much lower than the education percentage, but for us, it's about 50-50. And on our municipal side, about half of our budget is made up of payroll and the fringe benefits that go along with it. 10% consists of our healthcare costs, and 7.5% is the bond debt that we use to build sidewalks and roads and things like that. Okay. So this is what education is spending. So if education, I'm just going to roughly, we'll say 50-50 on your tax bill. This is what education is spending is done at the state level. We saw that not the current year, but the year before, when we saw a 20% increase on the education side. That 20% is, you know, shared across the whole way, but it made a huge impact. And it's not reflective of what the school budget spending increase did. It was a reflection of what the state funding formula did. So the school spending, if I recall, it was somewhere around 5% of an increase, but the tax increase was 19%. So that's something, you know, during the budget time, we talk frequently with the administration at the school, and we certainly take into account what's going on. And in that particular year, we cut all of the municipal line items to the bone. And I know that gets said every year, but there are things like you estimate what you're going to need for repairs and maintenance on vehicles. You estimate what gas is going to cost. That when a truck breaks, we have to fix it, but we just basically hope we have less things we need to fix. Well, that didn't go very well that year, and we ran about a $250,000 deficit. We knew that going in just because there was nothing kind of set aside for a worst case scenario. And we had a couple of those. And we also didn't put any money in our reserve fund or our capital reserve. Kind of the biggest impact on that was the availability of equipment. We had scheduled to replace a number of our vehicles back then, but we were still seeing a pretty big lag from COVID product availability. So our fleet was older, required a number of pretty significant repairs to get us through, and that was reflected in the budget. But half of the budget is state spending. So if education makes up half our budget, what is the state doing? And Vermont consistently ranks in the top 5 for pure per pupil spending. The average spending is about $26,000 per pupil, and it's about $15,000 as a national average. So your tax bill is made up of half education. Those decisions are made somewhat locally, but an awful lot of the education taxation is made at the state level. And you see, we are not at all competitive when it comes to education costs. And again, this isn't an opinion. That's what the numbers say. There's lots of reasons to go into that, but it is reflected in your tax. Another big impact has been labor costs. I think we go back to 2020 or so, and everybody deserves a $15 an hour minimum wage, and you say that in a really tight labor market, and you need to pay people just to get them to come to work, and that certainly has been reflected in the cost of labor over that time. You see, from 2012 to 2024, it's gone up over 50%, and that is not just equal across the board. Tighter markets, teachers, police, things like that have certainly skewed it even more than that. And the town runs 2 different unions, cover our staff, and in mid-year in 2024, we opened up our contracts because we were so non-competitive in our wage rates that we were losing staff and not able to replace them. So we worked with the union to get back to being competitive in the market, and I'm happy to say that worked, that we are essentially fully staffed all the time. This is what the state labor trends have done. It's basically that last paragraph that's in a chart. So that's a pretty steep graph. This is the town's labor charts. It's not quite nearly as steep, but certainly still shows a trend on the increase. This is an interesting one. This is the blue line is the tax rate and how it's increased, and the green line is the labor rate. And you can see that they are very strongly correlated. And as I mentioned, labor makes up about half of our budget. So we're paying people. We are not the highest paid in the market, but as I mentioned, we are competitive. Healthcare is another big contributor. That's what healthcare looks like. Last year, the fiscal year we're in right now, we saw a 23% increase in our healthcare premiums. And we do have a good healthcare plan for our employees, but it's factored into what the compensation plan is. And in this market, not having employees is bad, and healthcare is expensive, but it's something greatly appreciated by the staff, and hopefully the community appreciates the effort that we're put in. Again, nationally, like the local folks, we don't make decisions on what healthcare should cost, but as this slide demonstrates, Vermont is about double what the national average is for healthcare premiums. So this year, the last thing I saw was it 14%? I'm really not sure, but that's a number that we are given. We are obligated by our union contracts to provide the benefit, and it significantly increases the cost for us to do just what we did, nothing new, just to keep doing what we were doing. This is the last big contributor, and this is long-term debt. This is, if we want to take on debt, we have to take a question to the town meeting, ask people if they support a 20 or 30-year bond for everything from fixing the sewer treatment plant to roads and sidewalks. And we have had, certainly an intended plan to take on debt because every single year the biggest priority for the community is improved streets and infrastructure, sidewalks, things like that. And we took on debt over time, but then we thought, okay, that's getting kind of tough. So we have really taken a breather on bringing on new debt for the last couple of years, and that's reflected in that graph. And this graph represents our annual debt service payments, not the total amount of debt. So this slide is something I do every few years, and I often hear, "Wow, if taxes keep going up, I'm leaving. I got to go someplace else." And I completely understand the sentiment for that. The purpose of this slide is it shows all 24 towns in Windsor County, and I know there's plenty of places to move that aren't in Windsor County, but the red line there, even if you can't read all the little numbers, is Windsor, and we're smack dab in the middle at number 12. So there's no place to move locally where your property taxes are going to be significantly less, and there's plenty of places where you can move and they're going to be more. And on top of that, the other thing that I find so striking about this is there's 25 towns, but other than Springfield and Hartford, and to a degree Ludlow, none of the other towns have paid fire, paid police, paid rec departments, the full service component. And Springfield and Hartford in particular are quite a bit bigger than us. So the other towns have higher tax bills, not because they're running a more inefficient municipal government, but because Windsor's education cost, while the education cost per pupil is high, the state subsidizes Windsor's education by about 50%. So other towns may be spending more in their education or collecting more education taxes than they actually spend for their communities. The easy examples are always the towns where the ski resorts are located. But where we may spend more on municipal spending, we spend a lot less on education spending. So that puts us in the middle of the pack. So you pay the same tax rate as a lot of other towns, but you get the paid fire department. And sometimes people say, well, gee, do we need that? Anybody who has been listening to sirens this week, they had 3 structure fires. Today's Wednesday, Sunday into Monday. They do a couple of thousand plus ambulance and fire calls every year, and it's all day long. It's not something that a volunteer department could manage on their own. And this slide is, I'll say, the sales pitch. I've always harped on value, and Windsor has got a great location. No matter where you work, it's got great recreational opportunities, and generally speaking, our homes are priced lower than many surrounding towns like Hartford or Heartland or West Windsor. And basically what this slide shows is for every $10,000 you save on a mortgage, because the house costs less, you save about $60 a month on your mortgage payment. So is that another one of those liars use statistics and statistics lie? Maybe it is, but it's reality. If you pay $100,000 less for your house, we won't even do that. If you pay $20,000 less for your house in Windsor than you would in a neighboring town for a similar home, you're going to spend $120 a month less on your mortgage. And then you're going to have, the full services. Like we have the surrounding towns that use our rec service. We have surrounding towns that use our police and fire. So that's where, as I'm sitting here managing the town, I look at, you may not be happy with what you pay, but are you getting value? And I know from doing this for over 20 years, people are always mad about their tax bill, but they're really mad when their services are no good. The difference between complaining about your tax bill when it comes in versus when a plow truck goes down and we're not plowing quickly enough, or something like that, the community wants their services to be excellent. They don't want them to be fair or good. They want them to be excellent. And we have a small crew in everything we do, but they're highly capable. And I do believe that our services are well worth the money we spend. But sometimes, even if they're well worth it, if you don't have the money, it's still a burden. That point is not lost on the select board itself. This slide talks a little bit about the prebate program, and it's the property tax adjustment program at the state. And there's lots of ways you can find it. Just go online or go to the resource center. You can call here at town hall. And there are a lot of people in town that take advantage of this. But the bottom line is your entire household income, and that's everybody in your house and they work. If the income is less than $115,000 gross, you're eligible for some state assistance with your property tax bill. And I had our treasurer just randomly pull bills to see what kind of impact it had. And it's all over the place. You can see this person here has an $8,500 property tax bill. That's a pretty nice house. And the state paid $7,700. They only paid $663. So that was a huge benefit. On the other hand, this one here, $5,000 bill, they only got $500 in help, but it's still $500. So, if you take some time and look at that, there's, your income levels, the value of your house, there's a lot of things that go into the state formula. But if you're not checking that out to see if you qualify and at least running through the spreadsheet that the state has, you're doing yourself a disservice. So we'll put some additional reminders out. I think the enrollment is in the springtime. As I understand it, they use your prior years, calendar year 25, your income tax from that year will help determine the amount of benefit that you're eligible for. So you have time to do it, but make sure you do. This next couple of slides are just more about some of the frustrations I hear. And there's housing is expensive. There isn't any housing, even if you can afford it. I kind of hear, gee, there's no affordable housing. But on the other hand, a house goes on the market and in a week it's sold. So somebody's affording it. And it doesn't matter how much you had to spend. It doesn't seem like anybody can get a home these days. So this is a study I was part of called Keys to the Valley. It was done a few years ago. And it did a projection that said the Upper Valley needed $10,000 or 10,000 new homes by 2030. And that's a nice study and it's lofty, but like so many of these government studies, it's like, so what are you going to do about it? And that study was done, I'm thinking it was around 2021. We're building about 500 homes a year in the Upper Valley. So we're not coming anywhere close to meeting that goal. And there are still people trying to move here, and the demand just keeps getting tighter and tighter. So there's a number out there on the radar screens, but it doesn't really match up with action. Here in Windsor, we're particularly constrained. Windsor makes up about 12,000 acres, and a third of that is in current use. And current use is a state program that if you have 25 acres or more, and there's a lot of other things, you got to manage your land and stuff like that. But the state pays what can be a significant portion of your property tax bill if you promise not to develop it. So again, this is an observation. We don't have any houses, but the state has a program that pays you not to develop your land. So I know I like living in Vermont and seeing all the beautiful landscapes. So I'm not complaining about it, but if there's frustration, that could be one of the things that's leading to the frustration. And for us, another 30% is made up of protected lands like Mount Scottney State Park, the Grasslands Wildlife Management Area. So that leaves about a third of the land in Windsor that's possible to develop. And most of that is downtown. And if you're not in the flood zone, you're on a brownfield. So, and it's pretty densely built up downtown. So there's no easy answer for that. This is an example that, for us, we're happy to see we had that new apartment building, 25 new units of affordable housing on Main Street. That was a nice addition. The part that people may not see is in order to get that built, it cost $15.5 million. That's $620 per unit. And a lot of that has to do with environmental costs and regulatory costs that are imposed by the state to get something built. And you think, well, at least At least we're getting the tax revenue from that. That's pretty good. Well, on our assessed value, the building is at 1.44 million. So not $660 per unit, but more like 660,000. It's more like 60,000 per unit. And there's a lot of reasons to go into that, but we're happy to have it. 25 new apartments is good, but you're wondering why more isn't getting built. A lot of it has to do with the regulatory environment that we're in, which again is an observation, not a complaint, but it impacts the cost of things. I'm going to say more on the bright side. You may have been following the select board for the last year or so, and the town owns two lots on National Street that have derelict homes on them. We're demolishing the homes, and we're placing two new two-bedroom, about 800 square foot homes that are designed to be consistent with the community on National Street. And there's a picture here on the left. That's the house that's being constructed in a factory in New York. It's not a trailer home. It's a stick-built home that can fit on the back of a flatbed and then get delivered and put on a crane. The picture on the right is like a rendition of what the house is going to look like. And if you've been down in that neighborhood, you see that it's very consistent with what the houses down there look like. So we'll have two of those going in, and the town is paying $225,000 a piece. So there's a way to do it where it doesn't cost you $600,000 a piece, but it's not easy. And does the town really want to be in the real estate business? I don't know that it's ideal, but when something needs to be done, this is where the government can step in, and we are unique in that we will be collecting property taxes on those buildings and utility fees, pretty much forever. So we will see a return, and we have an asset that we'll be able to sell if we want to. Kind of lastly, the other big complaint I get is why there's so many empty storefronts on Main Street. Why don't we do anything about that? Well, if we is the government, I don't think anybody wants to see government-owned stores all on Main Street. But what we do have the opportunity to do is provide tools to help the private sector, small businesses, move along. In the bigger picture, the town has played a very big role in financing and taxes up in Artisans Park and getting those buildings built. And that's a great asset to have here in town. Downtown, it's more mom and pop. It's some tired buildings, but we do offer revolving loan funds that, let's say somebody wants to come in and borrow $50,000. We can offer them a loan. They go through a vetting process, business plan. It has to be a viable idea, but maybe we loan you $50,000 for 5 years, but amortize it over 10. You only have to pay the interest for the first year, things like that. So we don't finance the whole project, but we provide financing to it. We also stabilize property taxes, and what that means is if you take a building and say it's only worth $50,000, and you decide to put $500,000 in to fix it up, well, we'll say, well, we will freeze your property taxes at the $50,000 value for the next several years, incrementally increasing it, so you don't open the doors. Your first day of new business happens to be the first day your tax bill comes in, and you see this huge bill because you just did the nice thing of improving that property. So it helps feather the impact of that in over time. We have free assistance with business professionals to help with business planning, cash flow, financing, things like that. We have assistance with social media marketing. I think if you see our town Facebook page, there's a lot of it's the local businesses. There's town things there, but we work hand in hand with any business who wants us to help promote their social media. So we have those levers and we use them, but what it comes down to is the building owners have to want to rent them for a rent that a business wants to pay, or sell the building at a price somebody wants to buy, and then the community needs to go in and support it. And the last slide is just, that's all negative, but we have you go downtown, particularly this time of year, you see the effort that our business has put in at decorating. There are nice people doing good work on Main Street, taking care of the building, making the town look good. And sometimes you just take for granted what's here. You look at the architecture we have in town and the money that has been spent by private investment to maintain the historical significance of those buildings, and we have a lot to be thankful for. So the closing message to all of this is we're starting the budget season, and it's not going to be pretty. There's not an intention to bring on a lot of exciting new things, but just to keep on doing what we're doing. We have the same labor pressures. We have the same healthcare pressures that we have seen in the past, maybe getting worse. The school is in the same situation we are in, and we're going to be at an inflection point where we start saying, cutting back on our services. And when you only have 4 plow people, you really can't go to 3. And if we, let go police staff, it means we don't have 24/7 coverage. We may even lose some of our contracted services. So we cut back fire department. We see reductions in the income we get from our paid ambulance service. So it's not an easy thing to do, and it's provide what we're having, and I think keep the trajectory that the community is doing. I need to do the best job I possibly can to convey what we're doing so that you have the best information available to make the decision on whether or not you want to support the budget going forward. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. I know it's kind of dry, but we will put this presentation up on the website, and obviously you can see this on Windsor On Air anywhere you happen to be in the world with their global broadcast network or online links. So thanks again. Happy holidays to everybody. And as always, if you have specific questions, let me know. Just give me a call or send me an email and I'll get back to you. Thanks again.